Have you noticed how quickly petrol prices have risen recently? According to recent estimates, global fuel reserves have decreased, and OPEC Plus output cuts are expected to make the situation worse over the next weeks and months. Americans are currently paying the most for a gallon of petrol in at least 8 months, and experts in the industry warn that August will be even more painful at the pump due to refineries stopping for maintenance and a lack of domestic supply in many areas. In the future, filling up your tank will be much more expensive, and we're going to explain why in today's video. But before, we politely ask you to support our work by giving this video a thumbs up. The long period of stability in petrol prices has ended, and a perfect storm has started. Last week, prices at the pump increased once more overnight, and the outlook for the upcoming weeks and months doesn't offer any solace to American drivers. On August, the national average price for a gallon of regular petrol increased to $3.75, according to the American Automobile Association. According to AAA statistics, petrol prices are on track to hit levels last seen during the inflation peak of 2022, according to association spokesperson Daniel Armbruster. The price per gallon has soared to an eye-popping $6.50. Due to a busy summer travel season, both domestic and foreign producers are reducing their output. But demand is still high, driving up crude oil costs and driving down petrol stockpiles. This is either driving up retail petrol prices even more. According to Brewster, the price of oil is the main factor influencing changes in fuel costs. In July, the price of a barrel of crude oil increased by 10%, reaching a 3-month high. Everything indicates to the start of an upward trend that will persist for a while, as the expert remarked last Thursday that the price of petrol and other refined goods increased by 24 cents per gallon in relation to raw crude prices. Because of the supply, there are fewer petrol inventories. Gap brought on by production OPEC, and its partners stated this month that they would further lower output after cutting it by 1.5 million barrels per day in May. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies declared this month that they would further reduce output. Additionally, Natasha Knivas observed that sanctions on key exporting nations like Iran, Venezuela, and Russia have affected the world's supply of crude oil and contributed to a recent increase in prices. In a recent study, the global commodity strategy head at J.P. Morgan. Last week, AAA analyst Robert Sinclair also spoke out to warn the public that the OPEC's decision to reduce 4% of daily crude oil output has already cost the world's markets nearly 4 billion barrels per day this year. This decision has also increased the price of both crude oil and petrol. Saudi Arabia recently warned that they're willing to tighten production even more to hit their goal of $100 per gallon of crude oil. Officials pledged to reduce output by a further 1 million barrels per day next month. The kingdom's harshest reduction in years, the move is expected to limit supplies until 2024, as the producer group seeks to boost flagging oil prices and regain supremacy in the global market. Around 40% of the world's crude is supplied by OPEC+, indicating that its policy choices might significantly affect fuel costs at home. We export about 2 cargoes of petrol, mostly from the Gulf Coast, for every cargo we import. The expert added that we are the supplier of choice for Latin America, which has no additional refining capacity coming up this year since late June. Global oil prices have increased by more than 16% and are on track for the longest rally since before the financial crisis. The price of Brent crude, the worldwide benchmark, increased to $84 per barrel on Friday, up 3.9% over the previous 7 days. Brent crude futures were up around 11% at $82.33 per barrel over the same period. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude has increased by about 13% in the last 30 days to reach $79.56. U.S. oil prices are expected to increase by another 4% this week and have already had their longest rally since April 2022. The International Energy Agency claims the demand for oil is expected to increase by 2.2 million barrels per day to a record 102 million this year, which means there will be a supply gap of at least 1.8 million barrels per day. To further complicate matters, the impact of this imbalance between supply and demand will be catastrophic for American drivers. The price of petrol is rising as a result of rising temperatures. There are two primary causes for why hot weather raises petrol prices. One is that when people use air conditioning to cool off, demand increases and energy supplies become more expensive. Another is that many oil refineries reduce production due to high temperatures for safety reasons, which can cause inventories to drop while prices soar. Americans who would expect that the extraordinarily high petrol costs were a thing of the past, at this time are having a lot of troubles as a result of the hazardous combo. Due to the extreme heat that has been plaguing 2/3 of the United States across 20 states this month, refinery utilization, which measures how much crude oil refineries are processing, is also down. The Bayway Refinery, a 15,000 barrel per day oil refinery owned by Phillips 66, is the largest petrol manufacturing facility in the Western Hemisphere, and was already operating at low capacity for most of June and July due to unforeseen repairs, the association noted. A major refinery in New Jersey just went offline this weekend. According to Andy Gross, the national spokesperson for AAA, domestic oil supplies are also limited. If oil prices remain high in the ensuing weeks and months, they may have an impact on the upcoming inflation statistics. As the United States enters peak hurricane season, according to the National Hurricane Center, most storm activity occurs between mid-August and mid-October. According to Gross, depending on storm trajectories, domestic production may be reduced as offshore and Gulf Coast oil sites close. We are about to enter a hazardous time. If refineries in your area have lower or falling utilization rates, you're more likely to see petrol prices rise, he added. Gross said the major X factor is a hurricane hitting the oil infrastructure of the Gulf Coast, which can send prices soaring overnight. Patrick Dejan is the head of petroleum analysis at Gas Buddy, a website that assists users in finding low-cost gas. Refineries in Texas, Louisiana, Tennessee, and other states are already having trouble keeping up with demand. According to Tom Closer, the worldwide head of energy analysis and oil price information service. Petroleum, anywhere close to maximum rates. Engineers can tell you that it is challenging to operate at maximum levels when ambient temperatures are in the 100-degree range, he emphasized. Utilization of the nation's refineries fell by 0.9 percentage points from the previous week to 93.6%. Last week, distillate fuel production declined to 4.8 million barrels per day, while petrol production decreased to 9.5 million barrels per day. Refineries on the West Coast saw the biggest drop, 2.4% to 90.9%, followed by those on the Gulf Coast, 1.5% to 93.3%, and those in the Midwest, 1.1% to 97.7%. Data on oil prices show these percentages demonstrate the amount of capacity that was employed to refine oil in each region. The experts noted that it's possible Americans could be in for another 25-cent increase over the next couple of weeks because petrol price increases are expected to happen faster from this point on. Lower supplies indicate that there isn't any relief in sight at least until the end of 2023, according to Dahan, who emphasized the importance of noting these percentages because the lower the utilization percentage, the lower output, which has a direct impact on local petrol prices. We're woefully unprepared for any kind of emergency or supply disruptions and probably just a single extreme weather event away from seeing petrol stations experience massive outages. Again, at this point, we can only hope for the best, but prepare for the worst because this is shaping up to be the worst oil crisis of modern times, and the situation could become much more chaotic by the winter as supply systems face increased vulnerability just as it happened before.